If you hear mysterious noises and sounds, if you hear your name called when there's no one around, keep going, dear listener. This story is for you. I hope it will accomplish what I wrote it to do. In these words, you'll find all the tools you'll need so that when you're faced with unimaginable things, you won't react with fear, as most people do. You'll be equipped, calm, and able to see the truth. My best, Hedy. This is What We Keep Hidden by Lauren Nicole. Chapter 3. The Out. The next day, at the market, I could hear Mrs. Mom telling Audrey the usual speech about my health and asking her if she could help keep an eye on me. She passed the familiar piece of paper with all of our contact information on it to Audrey and told her to call any time. I do have a question, though, I heard Audrey ask Mrs. Mom. Well, two for that matter. Of course, Mrs. Mom said, and listened intently. Isn't it dangerous for her to be out here by herself? Wouldn't she be better off at home, like with an adult around? I peeked around the corner of the aisle to see Mrs. Mom give an exasperated smile and take a deep breath before answering. She seemed tired of people asking her that same question all the time. We don't want Hedy's life to be defined by a diagnosis. We're trying to give her the same independence her peers get. Even though there's a small chance of an emergency, we want her to live her life with freedom, not constraints. I caught Audrey's stance soften with understanding. A small grin began to spread across her face as I rounded the corner of the aisle and headed back towards them. Plus, she's got Lucy to help keep an eye on her, Mrs. Mom said. Right, Audrey started. That leads me to my second question. What on God's green earth is a cow pig? Audrey raised her hand to cover her mouth as she whispered, And how much do they cost? Oh, God, Mrs. Mom sighed. I don't know why she keeps telling people that. Hearing Mrs. Mom's remark, I quickly turned on my heels and headed in the opposite direction, hoping to escape that awkward stare down Mrs. Mom would give me whenever she had to explain the truth about Lucy. This wasn't the first instance I claimed Lucy was a cow pig. The only reason I did it was because people got defensive and treated us really weird when I said she was a pit bull. If I said she was a cow pig, they were much more friendly with her, out of curiosity. But when I said she cost a lot of money, they ended up treating us both with respect. People are weird, but they do sure follow patterns. Lucy is not a cow pig. She is a normal dog, just your run-of-the-mill pit bull, I heard Mrs. Mom explain. Ah, a pit bull. Wait, aren't those a dangerous breed? Audrey asked, shocked. Mrs. Mom laughed. No, they're great with children. When Hedy was a toddler, I researched which dogs were best with kids and found pit bull terriers were some of the best at protecting children, just like their own pups. Lucy loves Hedy, and they're practically inseparable. I mean, just look at them. Without realizing it, my chosen hiding spot was in their plain view, courtesy of one of those blind spot mirrors that hang from the ceiling. Audrey looked up and happened to catch a glimpse of Lucy and I's forehead kiss. You know, the kind where you lean your forehead into someone else's, kind of like you're telepathically sending your love to each other. Well, I suppose they are one of the cutest pairs I ever did see, I heard Audrey say. When we got back to the house, Lucy and I relaxed in the yard for a bit. I took a deep breath and held it. The air here was warm and smooth in summer, not hot and dusty like in the city. I exhaled. Lucy was laying down, belly up on the ground next to me, tanning in the sunshine, her favorite pastime. Her smile beaming as she faced the sun, soaking up the warm rays. I swung my raincoat over my shoulders. It was too hot to wear it, even for me. If I wasn't going to wear my raincoat, I sure wasn't going to make Lucy wear her vest. So I left it in the house. Besides, we weren't really going anywhere, just exploring the yard. Ready to go in the out? I asked Lucy. She opened her eyes and rolled onto her stomach to face me. Come along then, I beckoned as I started walking towards the oak trees. Lucy let out a long sigh behind me before she got up and trotted next to me. The air here was particularly light, not heavy, like where we used to live. Not only was the air in the city filled with the fumes of cars and machines, it was also weighed down with the exasperated sighs of the people rushing furiously to their destinations. They would bump into one another, arguing about who was at fault, never apologizing, and then storm off while muttering angrily under their breath. Those angry mutterings must have weighed down the air significantly. No one was angry here, and the air was lighter. Here, instead of people, there were flowers. Instead of buildings, there were trees. Instead of roads dotted with potholes, here there were moss-covered paths dotted with mushrooms. The only thing that rushed was the wind. It was so peaceful, and I loved every second of it. I had been so lost in thought that I didn't notice we had arrived at the oak grove at the back of the property. The tree line looked so small from the house, but now that I was standing underneath them, I realized their immense size. The sun, as hot as it was that day, stood no chance against these gentle giants. Their canopy created so much shade that there was an entirely different climate underneath. The air was cool and damp, and the smell of wet earth filled the air. I stood there for a moment, almost drinking in the green perfume. It was sweet and earthy, like a blade of fresh-cut grass. Lucy's nose twitched and quivered, a telltale sign that she was analyzing the new smells just like I was. With a drop in temperature, I decided to put my raincoat on rather than carry it as we went further into the grove. Flittering wings sounded above us as shadows bounced from branch to branch. Lucy's head darted back and forth, watching the birds' movements overhead. Her usual bouncy wiggle of a walk had adopted more of a gallop as she tried to catch up to all of the sights and sounds surrounding her. The birds sang warnings to each other as we passed through. One messenger bird would fly from the tree above us to the neighboring one up ahead, cautioning its feathered neighbors of our approach. They would all flutter down to the lower branches to gawk and squawk and chirp at us from their perch, while another bird flew to the neighboring tree, repeating the cycle. Although I was enjoying our walk and what I thought was a calm exploration of the grove, Lucy was getting increasingly nervous by the minute. Surrounded by so many new sights, smells, and creatures, there was a temporary departure from her typically calm demeanor. "Hey there, it's okay," I cooed gently while reaching over and petting her back. She seemed to jump at my touch. "Oh, Lucy, what's going on? The city was so much more intense in this grove." Maybe that was the issue. She grew up in the loud hustle and bustle of the city, where the only animals she encountered were other dogs, pigeons, and the occasional rat. There were a lot more creatures around her now than what she had been exposed to in her entire life. I shrugged my shoulders and let her explore at her own pace. I knew how taxing change could be firsthand. While Lucy absorbed her new normal, I reached into my pocket and felt around for the soft, worn leather cover of my notepad and pulled it out. Getting the pencil out of the gap in the spine was getting increasingly difficult now that it had been sharpened down to only a few inches. I turned to a fresh page and started sketching the different types of flowers and plants we passed along the way. I recorded estimates of their size, their colors, and occasionally their smells. I had stopped at one particularly intricate blossom when Lucy began whining. Her body tensed while she kept a laser-like focus on the bushes up ahead. "Oh, stop. It's probably just a squirrel," I told her, never looking up from the page. Her whining and whimpering intensified as something rustled the leaves of the bush. Curious, I put my pencil in the crease, closed my notepad, and leaned forward to get a better look. Suddenly, the leaves shook furiously as a small black shadowy figure jumped out of the bushes. It zoomed away from us and fled further down the path. Without a moment's hesitation, Lucy took off after it. "Lucy!" I screamed, but she was gone, just as quickly as the shadow appeared. I ran after her, as fast as my legs could carry me. "Go outside," Mrs. Mom said. "It'll be good for the two of us," she said. "None of this would have happened if I was back at my desk with my radio, and now Lucy's gone." "Lucy!" I yelled between my labored panting. The hot panic of fear and worry started to swell like rising floodwaters behind my eyes. "Get back here right now!" Thank you for joining us on this episode of What We Keep Hidden. Written, narrated, and produced by Lauren Nicole. Tune in next time to see what happens with Hedy and Lucy. This has been a Lauren Nicole creation.